Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Check out my comics, Starcrasher, Big Baby at KingComics.CA. Check out my other videos on YouTube. King Comics 2021 is my channel. Instagram, Maximus Rex 13, and Facebook, Max Rex and or Big Baby. So today, guys, it is Dale Keown Day. It is Wednesday, so we're looking at PITT, and more specifically, PITT number 11, cover dated May 1996. So we are full on in full bleed and no more image connection with this comic. And finally, we're going to get a pretty good tidbit, pretty good piece of PITT's origins. You know, what you see here on the cover, if you don't know, I'm not going to spoil it right away, but first of all, it is a great drawing, once again from Dale Keown, inked by Dan Panosian, who I think does an awesome job. I've talked about this before, but I think he's got a slightly chunkier line and slightly more angular kind of approach to Dale Keown's artwork, but he's still pretty darn loyal to the pencils, as we're going to see at the end of the issue. There's kind of a making of the cover that we're going to look at. But yeah, Panosian definitely, you know, sticks to what Dale Keown's thrown down. It's just a little bit of his kind of personal finesse of the line tends to show up, but what a great looking cover. Nothing's been cheaped on. The figure, the shadows, the foreshortening, everything's been worked out perfectly. Even the background here, all the tech and stuff looks great. That's all I can say. You know, computer colored 90s style for sure. I'm not sure about the green PITT on top, kind of gets lost a little bit, but the actual coloring on the piece itself, I think looks pretty darn awesome. You know, if you remember the 90s, you were around, or even if you weren't, you kind of noticed, you know, the highlights. I think they're called specular highlights. You know, and like when you look at an orb and there's like the point that the most light hits it, well, we're getting a lot of that there because we've got a lot of orbs with the musculature. Anyways, let's find out who this cute little character is as we dive into PITT number 11. So credits, we got Dale Keown, writer, penciler, Dan Panosian, inker, Chris Eliopoulos, letterer, Steve Olive, colorer. I thought it was colorist, so colorer is funny to me. Sounds like someone's got a coloring book to me. Anyways, so what I wanted to mention here that's kind of interesting. So Dan Panosian is the inker from pages 4 to 21 and the cover. And then all of a sudden it says here, Dale Keown, writer, penciler, pages 22, 23, and cover. He did the color separations, but it doesn't say inks. So I'm wondering if page 22 and 23 are maybe his first attempt at doing pencils straight to pencils to the page, where you know you would go in something like Photoshop or Procreate, whatever, and play around with the contrast, the brightness, the levels and stuff to basically make your pencil line darker so it appears to have been inked, right? Or as it's been inked. Obviously you have to be a very precise penciler to do that. But I think Dale Keown definitely qualifies, and I know later on he is going to do that. I don't know for sure if he ever did it in PITT, but I guess we're going to find out. If not with this issue, with the next and maybe somewhere in the future of this run. But I definitely know there's a point where Dale Keown goes full pencils, no inks, and you know, sometimes like, even though Dan Panosian, I guess, inked this first page, if you look at some of the stuff around the gun here and the trees back there, it almost feels like some of this might be pencil, right? Like maybe Dan Panosian inked to the foreground characters, but they just kept the pencils here and darkened them a bit. I don't know. There's some weird stuff going on, aesthetically at least in this comic, but the art does not disappoint at all, as usual, and starts off with our character from last issue that confronts PITT, and PITT fighting. As you know, as I said, there's always pretty much a monster fight per issue of PITT, which is cool. You know, to be honest, if you're reading PITT, you would expect a few monster fights at least. So to get one every issue is not so bad. I think it's kind of fun. Lots of blue. Once again, PITT is another comic that, you know, has a lot of blue in it. Kind of following the patterns of Joe Scioto before him, even though now this is Steve Olive. But I guess some of the characters' colors have been established, and it's blue. This whole double page, is it a double page spread? No, it's two different pages. It almost feels like a double page spread. It gets, so I was going to say here, maybe not such a great idea to you know, in some of the layout, or maybe he was expecting this to be on this side in this page. There's just something weird in the between there that kind of creates tangents and stuff and is a little hard to read. I'll just put it that way. All these spikes everywhere, right? So PITT gets the upper hand, but then this gentleman pulls out some, I don't know, shoots something into Pitt's ear here, and off he goes somewhere into another dimension or into the mind, somewhere, or maybe in the past. So we're brought to the planet Crete, where it's pretty much been established that Pitt is from, or supposed to be from, right? This is a pretty clever kind of transition here. It's a kind of Alan Moore thing, maybe, right? Where this drop slowly morphs into almost a circle and then into the planet. Gotta say, just all the level of detail here. Do you see down here the way he's done the hatching on these asteroids? Stephen Platt, baby. Stephen Platt. That's where he gets it. Even this planet, the planet itself, you look at it, the hatching on there, that's where Stephen Platt gets that. Such precise hatching from Dale Keown. Even here with, and I know Panosian's inking, but the pencils obviously are very, very tight. So what we're seeing here basically is what we saw a few issues ago, kind of come to some level, a low level of maturity. So what's explained basically is, if you remember, these characters here extracted out of Timmy's mother. Timmy was a twin, and they extracted one of the twins, brought it with them, and they basically mixed the DNA of the human with the DNA of Zoivod, right, the big villain, and created this little character here, who you've probably guessed it by now, so I'll spoil it, but yeah, basically that's Pitt, and that's Pitt's origins, right? Because we do know by now that Pitt is Timmy's twin, right? Genetically manipulated, kidnapped, genetically manipulated into becoming this, big, hulking creature and fighting machine, basically. Some good tech down here with the wires and stuff. I think all this works really well. Great hatching all the way throughout. Dale Keown's awesome. So I find when Dan Panosian is inking, maybe it's not so apparent on some pages, not so much on others, but maybe around here too, maybe for some reason the pencils aren't quite as tight from Dale Keown, but I find like Dan Panosian on these, at least these two pages here, maybe the few next, his style takes over a little bit more, and this almost starts to look like when I read those early issues of Prophet by Dan Panosian. Kind of a similar vibe in the inking and the overall aesthetic of it. It becomes, almost looks a little more extreme-ish, and by that I mean Extreme Studios. So Pitt's escaped, right? And they're like, well, he's just one little creature, right? You can see the size difference here. You got like just Pitt here sitting in his fluids, a little turd, and these big hulking, I guess for that race, adults. And then boom, you kind of get the shot on Pitt's face, and he's smaller, but he certainly has the same set of chompers, and that's what they say here. This creature was alone, scarcely the size of one of them, hardly a threat. Yeah, I don't know about that. He looks like one here for sure, even though he's tiny. And of course they start shooting at him, but since we know he will grow up to be Pitt. Here we go. I like this shot here. Nice and graphic. These guys have green blood, so you can go pretty crazy. Even though there's no comics code imposed on the image guys, and they can pretty much do anything they want gore-wise. And, Eric Larson, for example, certainly pushed it. If you're conscious that you have maybe a younger audience, I think it makes sense to still put that in there. And, the green blood just tends to disconnect us from it a little bit more than if it was a human and red blood, right? And boom, this double page splash I think is awesome. Just such a cool close-up, money shot of Pitt as, is he a baby or a kid? I'm not quite sure, but like, some little golem-like creature and still full of veins, the Dale Keown veins, the stabbing of the claws in this guy's head, and just, you've got manga levels of green blood splashing out here, Fist of the North Star style. Some great hatching on just this side shot of this guy's face, which is a hard angle to draw people at, even when they have no noses. If there were noses, it'd be even harder. All these characters in the foreground, just great hatching, look great. But doesn't that look a little bit like Rob Liefeld style hatching, more so than Dale Keown, at least on this guy, and maybe on over here, maybe more Jim Lee-ish. But yeah, just There's just something about some of the inking that ends up looking more, again, Wildstorm Extreme. Looks good here, though, on PITT, and man, the amount of saliva, you know. Dale Keown's just going ham with his saliva trope, because he uses it a lot, right? Starting on Hulk. And, you know, I gotta say, me and Dale Keown have something in common here. In my comics, too, I do like to spread the bodily fluids, whether it's blood or snot or, you know, anything else you can imagine. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if this warrants a double-page splash. I kind of feels like maybe these are 2 pages to get some pages in, get through them quickly. Not that they're bad or anything, but just what's going on there could have been maybe relegated to just 1 page and have something else go on. But really cool shot there of PITT landing. Those thick Pinosian lines right, though. Right? Less and less like Keown. Even here, right, this effect that they do where, you know, when someone's lit up or bright or electricity or energy or whatever, they take out the hatching, right? You just have kind of open lines here. Very Scott Williams is kind of the first guy to do that. So yeah, I feel like Pinosian is maybe originally more from the Scott Williams type of inking school, right? And Dale Keown, I find, has more of a fine kind of inking line than that. I don't know who I'd compare it to, but a little less overt and thick than, you know, the Scott Williams kind of extreme studios line. Great shot here of Roth, right? That's his name. So he's also PITT's brother, half brother, right? So he's Zoivod's son who's been crossed with some other alien race, not quite sure which one. So basically he's seems like, or they're kind of implying that he's killed PITT here, right? Because he doesn't want. He says, "I'm Zoivod's rightful heir. His attempts to create another hybrid son are doomed." So he doesn't want anyone obviously challenging his, claim to the throne. This is kind of weird over here. So they move his body, and the wounds are gone. The dead hybrid was alive. This shot of PITT here is just, it kind of makes me laugh because it just feels off-brand and off-character all of a sudden. It's just kind of weird. I don't know how else to describe it. His eyes are too big or something. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. So yeah, it still works really well. The hatching is great, but I do feel like more and more, yeah, we're getting more of the Pinosian and less of the Dale Keown in the inking style. Maybe the pencils are getting like less and less tight as they get closer to the deadline. And yeah, so this is where it gets weird because I feel like that something happened right at this page here with, you know, the creative team or something, because boom, all of a sudden the colors are quite different. The look is quite softer. Anyways, it's Dale Keown inking himself again, or it's Dale Keown doing pencils and again straight to print and just playing with levels and stuff to give the impression that pencils have been inked because his pencils are so precise, and that's why maybe it gives off a kind of a softer vibe. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's quite different from the rest of the book here. So basically, you know, PITT's had this kind of flashback, and now he's back, and I'm not quite sure. It seems like he's killed the other guy, Shank, right? And you got some blood here. And I will say this. I like PITT and I like the ongoing storyline. I've said before it's one of the better Image storylines, I think, now that I look back on it and I'm going through and reviewing these. But he always ends it kind of odd and weird. There's never kind of a definitive end, or to, you know, it does say continue next issue, but it just always feels like he always ends on a weird part. I don't know how else to describe it. It just always feels like it's an odd point to stop the story. It just feels like, man, I got 20 odd pages in, whatever my number is, and that's it. Speaking of which, I don't know if I'm doing this consistently with every issue, but I'm curious. I'm going to do I don't have to. 23 pages is what he did there, right? He's helped me out. I don't have to check it out and count. So 23 pages, one extra page of, as opposed to what the standard was back then. So a little bit of bonus material at the end there, which is fun. Some random sketches here. All look really cool. yeah, so here's the cover process. So he shows you kind of his rough kind of layout that he's got here. That he's done in blue line. Then he kind of refines it and does the final penciled version. So you can, hopefully that's big enough where you can compare the look here to the cover. I mean, again, I do think Panosian was pretty darn loyal and true to the pencils on the cover. Not so much on some of the pages on the inside there, but what are you gonna do? PITT always had deadline issues, so sometimes, you know, maybe you just got to get some issues out, right? And I think that's about all that's really interesting here. This I thought was interesting because you got the Hulk fighting PITT in an Image comic. So I guess because he's not colored green, you can argue that's just some big muscle guy. And I guess that's how you get away with not having any kind of legal repercussions. But yeah. Again, a lot of this I do feel is Image derivative or sometimes even copied directly from Image shots, right? Like this right here, I know is from a shot in the PITT comic and from the Hulk run he did. That I think the last cover he did, 398 with the leader next to him there. That's where that's from. So yeah, always a little bit derivative. I know exactly the Don Simpson, you know, pinup or PITT drawing. I think it's from the that first Image parody comic. I forget what it's called, but you guys out there probably know what I'm talking about. By Don Simpson. Splitting Image. Is that what it's called? I think that's what it's called. This comes from an actual issue of PITT. So yeah, a lot of guys just copying stuff they were seeing in the comics. Which again, when you're 12 and 13, that's fine. But every once in a while you get a gem. Just not in this issue. Man, the PITT Crew CD. Does anyone out there have any information on that? Did that ever come out? Maybe I keep forgetting every time I do reviews. I should maybe look it up on YouTube, if anywhere it's going to be there. Maybe the Internet Archive. I don't know. Anyone out there has any info, let me know. So there you go, guys. That is my review of Dale Keown's PITT issue number 11. If you are still watching videos and are subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a second and really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps get us out there to other people who are into comics just like we are. So have an awesome day, everybody.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.